Hi everyone, good afternoon. Welcome to this TeachMeet. How can I prepare for my first trainee placement? So we are really excited for this TeachMeet because we'll be talking to you literally about everything you need to know to go into your placement and have a very successful start. So I'm going to talk to you a bit about what we're going to be going through, and then we will introduce ourselves and then we'll get started with the session. So we're going to start off with talking about what to expect when you first start your placement. And then we're going to talk about how to balance coursework and placements as well, because that's a really important aspect of kind of that balance that you need to get at the beginning, because you're going to set yourself up to kind of have a really good balance so you can go through the year in a successful way as well. We're also going to talk about how, whilst you're on placement, how you can also gather evidence for the teacher standards and also for your coursework too. And we're going to move on to talking about developing a good relationship with the parents of the children in your class whilst you're on placement. We're going to cover a little bit on behaviour management as well, as you're coming in as kind of as a new teacher, as your placement, the children in your placement already have their current teacher. So you're just kind of how you can pick up little sort of strategies here and there to help you just have a good start with the kids. And also how to develop your teaching practice over the year as well. So we've been covering quite a bit today, but as Emily mentioned, there will be an opportunity for you to pop any questions in the chat if you need to. And also at the end, when Ash and I have finished presenting, you would also have a chance to ask those questions directly then. So we plan for this session to last around 40 minutes, and there will be time at the end for questions. Emily will pop in the reflections PDF. So in that PDF, we've just put together some links that we think might be helpful, some resources, maybe some podcast videos, that sort of thing that might help you with starting your placement too. That will have some top tips in there. And we might ask for your thoughts at certain points as well. So if you would like to answer, then feel free to raise your hand, or you can just pop your answer in the chat if you'd rather not speak on camera. So that's what we're going to be covering today. And then I'm just going to introduce myself. So my name is Matisha, and I was a teacher for 7 years, and throughout my time in school, I taught throughout Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2, and I actually spent my first 3 years of teaching in Year 6, and I had some experience in supply teaching as well. So I'm part of the Trainee Teachers and ECTs team here at Twinkl, and I create videos for our YouTube channel, and I also support trainee teachers and ECTs on our Facebook groups and also in CPD sessions just like this. So our main aim in the team is to provide you with all the support, advice and guidance that you need to make a flying start in your career in teaching. And I'll just pass it on to Ash now to introduce herself.
So hello guys, my name is Ashley. I'm also a former primary school teacher. I taught predominantly in Key Stage 2 in Year 4 and Year 5. I've also been a supply teacher and a one-to-one learning support system. So at the moment, I am also working with Matisha in the Trainee Teachers and ECT team here at Twinkl. So I co-host our podcast, which we do monthly videos on, monthly podcasts on everything to do with teaching. So if you like podcasts, please listen. I lead the TikTok channel for the team, and I also create all of our new resources for trainees and ECTs. So if you've got any ideas for a new resource, please pop them in the chat and I will do my best to make that for you. And I just absolutely love helping you to become confident. The training year is such an intense but wonderful year, and it's great to see the difference between the start and the end of the year as you go on to become ECTs. So I hope to help you along that journey.
Amazing, thank you, Ash. So I'm just going to get started on what to expect when you first start your first placement. So when you start your first trainee teaching placement, it is so exciting, but it can be quite challenging as well, because not only are you going into school and teaching, you also can be doing a lot of coursework assignments and kind of having that balance as well. So what I'm going to kind of discuss in this part is what the first few weeks of going into school might look like for you. So when you first find out what placement school you'll be going into, it will be a good idea to familiarize yourself with maybe the school's policies, procedures, and ethos, because every school is different, and you may have experience in schools from before. Maybe you worked in a school, or maybe you may have done a little bit of work experience, or maybe you had potentially even had a TA job or some sort of experience in a school, but your placement school may be different from that. So it'll be a good idea to just anything they have on their website, basically, you can have a look at and kind of just start getting to know. So when you go into school, you go in with a little bit of knowledge. start having a look and get at maybe some observations as well. If you get a chance, which you should do during as a trainee teacher, to observe other experienced teachers, that's such a good way to develop your teaching practice, because not only can you talk to experienced teachers, you can see that the way they manage the classroom, they manage the behavior of the children in their class. You can actually see what their lessons look like, how they plan their lessons, and also how the delivery of that lesson could look like as well. So take this time to observe. If you get any free time whilst you're on placement, say you're not having to teach straight away, then you can observe your class teacher completely, like if you have the opportunity. Really important, not just to get to know maybe your mentor or your class teacher. It's actually good to build a strong relationship with all staff across the school, because everyone can provide you with some sort of guidance and support. So whether that's the ICT technician, whether that's another TA, maybe you're in nursery or reception, but you get to know the TA in year 5 and 6, that's still going to be really, really helpful for you. And also leadership team as well, if you can get to know them, even better. Also, planning and preparation. So you will start planning and preparing your own lessons under supervision, of course, of your class teacher. You will have the support. You won't be expected to start doing everything on your own. So don't worry about that. You will have the support, and you should have the support. Another thing I wanted to mention as well is just to kind of something to be wary of, is that when you go into school, it is a very fast-paced environment, especially as a trainee teacher. So things change quickly and things change all the time. So you may go in on the first week and you may have assemblies on a Monday morning, and then the next week it might change and it might be on a Wednesday morning. It changes all the time. So it's just to kind of get your head around that as well, that things will change and that's okay. It's just a fast-paced environment, and you may need to also adapt your teaching strategies, because one day you might have a class of 28 and the next day you might have a class of 30, because you might have 2 children that have joined. So just kind of get your head around that environment changing sometimes. Also, workload. So you will learn how to balance your lesson planning, marking, and any other admin tasks that you might have in school, as well as your assignments. And we'll talk about how you can balance that more in this session as well. There will also be opportunities for you for professional development as well. Like, you should be able to take part in any staff meetings as well once you join your placement school, and hopefully you'll get an opportunity to sit through those and through inset days, trainings, and whatever kind of content they may share with you in staff meetings. So so the first few weeks are going to be very, very exciting, but there will be a lot going on. So it's just to kind of prepare you for those things.
Okay, so now I just wanted to talk to you guys about how to balance your coursework and placements, because you will be expected to complete them alongside. So just because you are on placement doesn't mean that your assignments or any sort of coursework that you're given by your university or training provider will stop. So it is learning to balance those, and it can feel a little bit intense, but hopefully we're going to give you a few tips to make that as easy, as sort of manageable as possible. Now, the key theme in this is time management. And before I go into the bullet points, I just want to mention it, and I mention it in every single one of these videos that we do, is to find what works for you. So when we're going to give you these tips, some of these might work and might be fantastic, or you might work in a completely different way and you might need to do things differently. That's absolutely fine. It is about learning what is good for you and then making sure that you're doing that for yourself. So the first thing that you're going to be wanting to do is to get a little bit ahead of the game. So at the start of your training courses, I think most of you might be on them already, or will be know some scheduled days that you're going into university or training providers. However you are doing this teacher training, you'll be given a list of dates for your assignments or coursework deadlines and different things like that. Some providers might do it differently and sort of give them out at different times, but hopefully you will be aware of what's going to be expected at certain points in the year. Make sure that you're making a note of those. You don't want to be surprised, because you might have placement and it's really, really busy, and then you don't want to think, oh, I've got an assignment due in 2 weeks. You want to be able to plan for that accordingly and to try and do it slowly so that you know it's not overwhelming. And that goes into the next one of creating a schedule and stick to it as much as possible. And again, this is what works for you. So you might be a person that likes to do a little bit often, or you might be someone who actually does need the time pressure and sort of not leave it to last minute, but you might prefer to do it in one big chunk and just dedicate a couple of days to an assignment or something like that. So whatever schedule works for you, try and create one as a little bit of a routine and try and stay on track with that and be disciplined with that. So again, set deadlines for yourself. I am a person that likes to do little and often. So when it came to assignments, I would do a little bit every weekend, and I would dedicate maybe an hour a weekend to at max. And I would do that. My husband, who is a teacher as well, he is a time pressure sort of person. He does it all in one go. I don't understand how he can do it and not get overwhelmed and stressed, but he can. So that's what works for him. And we're very different, but we both get the job done. So it just depends on what works for you, but sticking to those deadlines are really, really important. Again, you don't want to be stressing last second. Prioritizing tasks is a fantastic skill for you to learn now and to take into your teaching career, because a teacher will always say their to-do list never seems to get done. And it's true, because there's always something that you can be doing. But learning to prioritize and learning, to do the important and urgent things first, even if they might not be the most entertaining of tasks, is a really important thing for you to do. And as a teacher, you will have to do that. Also, being on placement at the same time of your coursework can be a fantastic way to get them done. Now, it seems a little bit overwhelming. You're thinking about having to balance both things, but a lot of your assignments are going to be either on specific practices you'll be doing as a teacher, such as maybe it's a behaviour management, maybe it's something to do with SEND. And being on placement is a great way to speak to staff members who will have lots of information and guidance to help you with that. It'll also be a fantastic opportunity for you to get experience observing and seeing those practices going on in real time. So although, yes, it might seem a lot, and I'm not going to lie and sugarcoat it, it is an intense training process, but doing both at the same time, it can help you gain evidence and understanding as you're writing those assignments. So it says there it is common to feel overwhelmed. It's also really important to look after yourself and your mental health and your well-being. And there is the popular phrase of, you can't pour from an empty cup. So it is making time for yourself and doing things that you enjoy and that help you to fill your cup. And that could be, you could be someone who loves the gym, and you might want to make sure that you are getting to the gym a couple of times a week, and that helps you and that makes you feel better. That's fantastic. You might be like me, who just likes to binge watch TV series at night, and I need to make sure that I can dedicate some time to do that. That's fantastic. Whatever works for you, just make sure that you are spending some time looking after yourself. And if you are struggling with any aspect, whether that is the courseworks and the assignments, whether that is on placement, whether that is, with your well-being and things, please reach out for help. Your tutor at your training provider is there to help you. So is your class mentor, and there's other support staff that are there. And if you do need to reach out about anything specific to do with teaching, then you can always reach out to us as well, and we are here to help you. But it is not a weakness to ask for help. Please do. I've done it plenty of times, and it always does feel much better afterwards. And it's also great for your mentor to know where you're at, because they don't want to think that you're really, really confident when actually you're struggling, because they can help you, and that is what they want to do. It is fantastic role as a mentor, and they want to just support you.
Thank you, Ash. That was really good advice, actually. Really good advice. Yeah, especially like just speaking up when you're feeling like it's getting too much. Like definitely, it's not to try not to see it as a weakness at all. Like, it's okay to ask for help. What I want to now talk to you guys about is gathering evidence for the teacher standards. So you may be familiar with the teacher standards. If you're not, then you will be, because you will be seeing this a lot in the next few years, especially throughout your training and your ECT induction. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about what they are and how you can evidence them. So the teacher standards are a set of guidelines, and they outline the expectations for teachers' professional practice, behaviour and conduct. They're designed to basically ensure that teachers provide a high quality education for their students. And there are 8 standards in total. So what these standards are is you need to provide evidence against each 8 of these standards. And that will then lead into pretty much you becoming a teacher at the end of your training. And also you'll be using these throughout your ECT induction. You'll kind of be assessed against each standard. So it's very important that you get familiar with the standards now, moving forward from now, basically. So providers of your initial teacher training, the DFE states that they should assess each trainee teacher against the standards in a way to kind of show that you are suitable to have QTS qualified teacher status at the end of your training. So this document is available to download on the Twinkl website from the DFE. It's a easily accessible document, and it's very, very, like, schools will know this document as soon as they see it. Well, they should anyway. So let's talk about how you can gather evidence for the teacher standards. So there are so many different ways that trainee teachers can gather evidence for the standards. And here are just a few ideas of what you could do. So your lesson plans will show clear and challenging learning objectives, which will cover the teacher standards. Because when you look closely at the teacher standards, you'll see, oh, actually, I cover a lot of these on a daily basis. You probably cover all of them on a daily basis when you look at them. But the key bit here is you need to have evidence to show that you are. So your lesson plans can definitely be used as evidence. Also, observation notes from your mentor. So keep those. So important. If they are written on paper, then photocopy them, keep them in a folder, or maybe you might get them emailed to you, download it, keep them on a file on your computer. Just make sure you have evidence for them, because you're going to need it maybe for assignments and maybe towards the end of the year as well. Any assessment data that shows our pupils are making progress in their learning. So for example, say during your placement, you may work with a small group. You might have an assessment that you do with them at the beginning of term, and you have the results from that. You have the data from that. You can keep that in your folder, and then you might assess them again at the end of the term, and you'll see the progress that they've made. And that's how you can show evidence that the pupils have made progress. If you participate in any professional development activities, for example, any CPD within school, maybe you take part in some safeguarding training, it could literally any CPD that you take part in, any inset day that you might be a part of within your placement school, any evidence that you've got to say that you took part in that, keep it as in your folder, or keep it somewhere where you know you can access it. Also, evidence for any contributions within the school community. So for example, if you go on a school trip and you were part of maybe writing the risk assessment, maybe you took part in planning the Christmas performance, which you may be for this placement, or maybe the class assembly, any sort of school community thing that might go on. Every school specific. Some schools do fairs, some schools do, I can't think from the top of my head, but all sorts of stuff they do. If you were part of any of that, then make sure that you have everything as evidence. Anything that you did, take photos as well of maybe displays that you may have created in the corridors, in the classroom. Everything can be used as evidence, and all of that will cover the teacher standards as well. So there are so many different ways that you can keep this evidence together. You can keep it digitally, like on your computer, maybe keep a folder and then you've got everything in one place. Some trainee teachers like to be quite creative, and they create maybe journals, scrapbooks, folders, that sort of thing. Like, it's completely up to you, but obviously you do what you have the capacity to do, so what you have the time to do, because this is something that you will have to maintain throughout the year. So you don't want to get started on this magical, amazing scrapbook and then realize halfway through the year you might not be able to continue with that. So just basically just gather as much evidence as you can and start from as soon as you get into school.
Fantastic, thank you, Mrs. Shirt. Just on that, I used to, my evidence would literally be an A4 piece of paper, and any trips or anything that I went on, I would literally just date what it was, and I used to get my mentor to sign it. So it doesn't have to be fancy, it doesn't always have to be printed, it can be just a handwritten, it can be post-it notes, it can be anything. I just used to get my mentor to sign it, so it felt a little bit more official, but it doesn't have to be really sort of professionally made. It can just be anything, and I used to stick it into my folder, and that was it. And then when it came to it, I used to sort it out to make sure that I'd got enough for each standard. So yeah, don't worry too much about that. So I wanted to talk about establishing a positive relationship with parents. I know as I was a trainee teacher, I felt quite young going into the profession, and parents were always seemed a little bit intimidating to me. They really obviously care about their child and their education of their child, and I always wanted to make sure that, you know, I was giving them the best. But we wanted to cover this, as we know it is something that might make some trainees anxious. We wanted to give you some top tips on how to deal with that before you go on your placement, or if you're already there. So the first thing is to communicate regularly. So your class teacher or your mentor will usually have a system in place of how they are communicating with parents. That might be meeting at the door in the morning, or you know, in the afternoon when you're saying goodbye to the children. Some schools have apps now and online ways of messaging. Some schools have homeschool diaries that they write in every day. Whatever your school or your class teacher does, get to know what that is, get familiar with it, and then try to start to engage with it. On your first placement, especially at the beginning, you are not going to be expected to be communicating with the parents around, like, you know, serious issues and things, but you might sit in meetings. You might want to be a presence at the door in the morning just to say hi, introduce yourself, get to know which parent belongs to which child. All of those little things that you can do, try to do that, and try and communicate regularly so they know who you are and that they can talk to you about it. Alongside that, make sure that you are approachable and friendly. A smile does go a really, really long way. And you want them to come to you if they've got any questions or concerns. It's really, really important that as teachers and staff and parents, we all work together to help that child. They may say things at home that they don't want to tell their teacher. They may tell their teacher something they don't want to tell their parents. It's important to obviously handle that information with care, but it's also, you want their parents to have that open dialogue with you, that you can support that child completely. So you want to be approachable and friendly, so they want to do that with you. The next one is to be responsive to a parent if they do bring up any concerns. You want to be addressing them quickly and professionally, and you want to really be listening to their concerns and suggest some solutions and work with them to decide on what the best solution is. And that may take a little bit of time. That may take a few suggestions on your behalf or their behalf, so you can come together to find something that you think is suitable. But it's just making sure that you're taking them seriously. They think that you're taking them seriously and dealing with whatever issue that may be. It may be friendship groups have gone a little bit downhill. You can be suggesting, you know, maybe you change the seating plan for the whole class so it's a bit subtle. Maybe they want you to encourage their child to play with some other children, or it may be that you just have to completely separate some children from each other for a little bit until they can work through their disagreement. But again, coming up with those suggestions, coming up with those ideas, and you can work together to decide what's best. Always try and be positive and supportive. You want to have a positive attitude, and you want them to believe and know that you deeply do care about their child and the issues that they are facing, because you want them to come and tell you the issues. It's just a really nice I'm a parent myself now, and the idea of my child going to school, she's too young for it at the moment, but I want that teacher to care for her. Obviously not as much as I do, but you want her to feel like she is supported. So you want to make sure that you are positive and encouraging. Going alongside that, it is talking to them about the positives and the negatives. So the first example I'm going to give, if you've got a child that is, you know, quite disruptive in the class, and you are having to very regularly talk to their parents about negative behaviour that you are witnessing and issues that we need to solve. If they are having a great morning one morning, and you do have access to communicate that to the parent nice and quickly, maybe it is a message online or write it in the diary, such and such had a fantastic morning. It goes so far with those parents to know that their child is doing positive things. And it's strangely quite, you don't hear it that much. Teachers don't tend to call up every parent and tell them a positive thing that the child has done that day, but you will if it's negative and you need to talk to them. So you don't want the parents just constantly hearing negative things come from school. So if you can, and you've got a child that's done fantastic, please let them know. And again, if you've got a child who is usually fantastic and then has like an off day, don't be scared to tell that parent. If it's something that you can nip in the bud quickly by having that conversation, you want to be having that conversation with that parent so they know and they can deal with it. Because the worst thing that you can be doing is just bringing something up negative that you've never told a parent about during a parents' evening. You want that open conversation, talk about the positives and the negatives, and be a realistic conversation with the parents about their child. But again, do that in a way that your class teacher and your mentor and your school wants you to do that. Yeah.
Well, that was really good advice, Ash. I think especially just focusing on the positives as well. Like I remember I had in one of my placements, I had quite a disruptive child where we get a lot of phone calls home about disruptive behavior. And one day he had a really good day, and I actually called home and said, and the mum said straight away, she goes, "Oh no, what's he done now?" And I said, "No, actually, he's had an amazing day, and I'm calling you to tell you that." And she was so happy. You just don't know how you could just make a parent's day as well, just by giving them some nice news that they've had a really good day. So that's always something nice you could do, and they would remember that as well, and they'll definitely remember you when you make that phone call. Okay, I want to talk to you about behavior management, kind of because we were on the topic as well, behavior management as well, weren't we? So when you're going in as a trainee teacher, it can be quite like a lot of, especially on Facebook, when questions and advice gets asked, and I take a look at that. A lot of the questions, especially in the early days of placement, is behavior management. How can I get the pupils in my placement class to listen to me, because they're so used to their class teacher, and now I'm just this teacher that's come in, and I can't get them to listen to me, and I can't develop good behavior management with them. So I wanted to give you a few bits of advice and tips that may work, and things you can try out. So the first thing that I wanted to mention was to actually observe what your class teacher is doing. So at this point in the year, or if you have started your placement, or whenever you do start your placement, your class teacher would have had a good few weeks with their class. So they would have probably started to develop a sort of a kind of like a behavior management routine almost, of different little bits and pieces that they're doing to kind of keep the behavior manageable. So one of the quickest ways is to actually spend time just observing what the class teacher is doing, like just little things like, where do they stand in the classroom? Like, do they stand in front of the class? Do they walk around when they're teaching? You know, how do they address low-level behavior disruption? So if there's a little bit of chit-chat going on in the corner of the classroom, how do they address that? Do they stop the whole class, or do they go and talk to that pupil individually? Like, you know, those kind of things you can pick up on. So how do they deal with when a child calls out, or maybe that transition of moving from the carpet to their tables? Or maybe you might have a few children that finish the work early. Like, you know, what does the teacher do to make sure that that child doesn't go off task afterwards and maybe starts being disruptive? So those kind of things you can pick up on is just by observing. So when it's your turn to kind of start teaching and start getting to know the children, it's really important that you set out your expectations and also be consistent. So it's important that you clearly communicate what your expectations are for behavior. And to make these expectations a reality, you need to be consistent and deal with the problems whilst they're small. It's easier, in a way, people say, it's easier to come across quite strict and then become more lenient, whereas starting off lenient and then becoming strict is actually a lot harder, that transition. Try to focus on the positives as well. So you get more on what you get more of what you focus on. So make sure you're focusing on the children who are giving you the behavior that you want to see. So if you see really positive behavior, point that out. Just say, well done, you're sitting really nicely on the carpet today. Oh, look, you can make a big deal out of it as well. Look how wonderfully these children are sitting here. You know, kind of that kind of pointing out the positives rather than pointing out that someone's not doing the right thing is a good way to go to. So another idea would be to kind of plan for behavior management as well. So think about, you know, if you're teaching a particular type of lesson where you may be doing different kinds of things, maybe a bit of moving around in the classroom, again, that transition from the carpet to the tables, just think about what kind of resources they might need as well, and once they've completed the work, like, do you have a task for them to get on with? Do you have something that they can do? So kind of planning in advance as well. You can kind of, sometimes once you develop more experience in the classroom, you can kind of also almost anticipate what might happen, like in a certain situation. So for example, if you've just had wet play, you will know that the children have been inside the classroom for like the majority of the day. So the behavior might be a little bit different because they haven't had a chance to run around outside. So as you get more experienced, your behavior management will get better as well. Also consider engagement as well. So when you're teaching a lesson, if the children are engaged and the work is at the right level for them, they are less likely to misbehave. So if you are experiencing poor behavior, it could be because the work is not engaging enough, or it might not be challenging, or it might be too challenging for the children as well. So all of these things are things that you can reflect on if you have a particularly tricky lesson that you've taught, or maybe a tricky day. You can reflect on this and think, what was my lesson like today? Like, and what were the children's behavior like in this particular lesson? Also, sometimes another way to see is that if you've got really tricky behavior in a classroom, in the classroom, or maybe with a particular pupil, is that it's normally sometimes a symptom of an underlying issue that may have nothing to do with you. So it's really, really important that if a child is misbehaving for you, that you do not take it personally, even though it's hard. And I've been there. Honestly, I have been there where I've like, why is this child only misbehaving for me and they're not misbehaving for the class teacher? It seems like you just take it quite personally, especially at the beginning. But just try and remember that this is probably something else that's affected them. It might be something in the playground. It might be something at home. It might be, honestly, they're just finding the work really tricky. It might not be something personal towards you, but it's that's kind of the way that they're dealing with what they're going through. So it's really important to try and make the effort to get to know the pupil, and you'll learn a lot more about them as well, and kind of like how they might cope with different struggles that they may be going through. So I know I've covered a lot in that behavior management section. So if there's any questions that you have, then feel free to pop them in the chat, because we could talk about behavior management forever. There's so many different strategies you can use.
Okay, so the last thing that I wanted to talk to you about is developing your teaching practice, which is, it comes under a lot of things, but basically the idea is, how do you become a better teacher and develop as a teacher? And also it's a way of, how do you develop your teacher style? What kind of teacher are you going to be? What do you like to do? How do you like to teach lessons? With Matisha saying, it might be easy to be strict to then go to more lenient. Where do you fit on that scale? What are you comfortable doing or saying, or acting in a way? And these are lots of ways that you can sort of learn that on your placements and in your training. So the first one is observations. We have talked a lot about observations, but they are fantastic, and they are something that you really should be taking advantage of during your placements and your training year, because when you become a established teacher, the opportunity for observations does decrease. So you want to be taking advantage of these opportunities. And you can ask to observe different teachers for lots of different reasons. And you should be doing that based on your own reflections on what you would like to improve on, or you just fancy seeing, that teacher's quite exuberant, and you want to see how they deal with it, or you've heard this teacher is fantastic at organisation. You want to see how she's set up a classroom and how that works with students. I used to work with one teacher where it was meticulously organised. The children knew exactly where everything went, and I aimed for that, never reached those heights, but it was fantastic to pick up some ideas. And that's what observations are for. It is for you to magpie, cherry pick little ideas. When you're going into an observation, make sure that you've asked the teacher first. Don't just turn up, because they can be still quite intimidating even for experienced teachers. So ask your mentor if they can arrange it, or ask the teacher themselves. And make sure that you're conducting yourself in a professional way. You may not always agree with everything that every teacher does, but going in and starting to criticise other teachers and what they do probably isn't the best way. Just magpie what you like, and sort of just disregard other things that you don't think either you would do or that you don't think work that quite well. But it can be fantastic. It can be observe lessons that you've never taught before, especially if you are in primary. We have to teach a lot of the curriculum. You may never have taught an RE lesson before, so it might be fantastic to go and watch the RE lead and see what they do and how they do that, and magpie ideas. It may be, like I said, organisation, or you may have a teacher that your mentor knows is fantastic at transitions. They are such a tricky thing as a new teacher to get right. It can be fantastic. You don't have to go and observe for the whole lesson. It can literally be the first 10 minutes. How do they get the class in, settled, sat down, starting to work on something? Whatever it can be, but just try and get as many in as you can. The next one I mentioned was reflections. So this can be self-reflections. It can also be asking your mentor to reflect and give you some ideas on what went well, what you could improve on. But that self-reflection is really, really useful. But what I would say is try and guard against being overly negative. I know that as a new teacher, and I did this myself, and I know lots of people who did, you focus on the things that didn't quite go to plan. And that's great because you can reflect, analyze what you can do next, and then adapt and hopefully get better next time. But it's also really important to think of all of the things that went well. And I'm going to be honest, you may have some horrible days. You may have some days where just lots go wrong. Every single teacher does, and every single teacher does every year. You do just have those days where just everything seems to go wrong. And it's really important in those times for you to look for at least 3 positives. That's what I was always taught when I was training, is think of 3 things that went really well. It might be that you didn't have to do break duty, so you had a warm cup of coffee at break time, and that was nice. It might be that a student said that you looked nice today, because that is few and far between sometimes with little children. They're very honest and they will point out everything wrong. So if they tell you dressed nice, you know that you are. So all of those little positives can be a fantastic way of just building yourself back up, dusting yourself off and going again. So it's really important to reflect, look at those teaching standards that Matisha mentioned before. What have I hit? What have I done really well today? What aspect can I do better at? And then, so like I said, dust yourself off and go again tomorrow. CPD is also a fantastic way to improve. It's a brilliant way. We have so many free CPD sessions like this one, but we have loads that cover lots of other topics. We also have different teams. Don't want you to leave our CPD sessions, but we do have other teams that cover lots of other things, and they can be more specific. Like we have a SEND team that talk about different areas of that. So take a look at our Eventbrite and see if there's things that you like the look of there. We also have CPD resources that can help you. But the first point of call is always speak to your mentor, your school, your training provider to see if there's any CPD courses that they want to put you on. It is a fantastic way for you to learn new aspects of teaching and new ways to teach. And also they are fantastic bits of evidence for your folder. So it's always useful to join those CPD sessions and start ticking off some of those teaching standards. But yeah, just observe, reflect, and CPD.